Welcome in, y'all. Timeshare Clarence. First and foremost, I want to thank God for waking me up this morning, blessed me with another day, another opportunity to work towards becoming the man I desire to be. This video, I want to talk about Jesus. So let me give my little disclaimer. I don't believe God was perfect. I don't believe Jesus was perfect. I don't believe that people interpret the Bible for what it is versus what they would like it to be. And again, no judgment. This is just an observation, because every time I read the Bible, it's like, am I reading something different than everybody else reading? Because none of this stuff, it shows like there's not one indication that either God or Jesus is perfect. But I specifically want to talk about Jesus. So just my biggest challenge with like accepting Jesus was always that it just doesn't make sense for God to punish him for us, and then we still gotta go through the human experience, which is what Jesus went through. Nobody can get through this unscathed. Nobody. But if he didn't, and they just don't want to be honest about it. And when I say they, I mean whoever passed down and documented all this stuff throughout history, at a level where, it's distributed to the masses in a certain form that is very intentionally constructed. So I think about the whole thing. I don't just think about the book. I think the book was put out for a purpose, and the people that decided what went in the book and what didn't go in the book, that's not something they wanted in the book. But because that's the reality, it's all throughout the book. Like, they don't want to put in the book that God is not perfect and Jesus is not perfect. They don't want to put all of Jesus's mistakes in the book, because then, like, what are we aspiring to? But if you create a hero, a perfect hero who sacrificed for the people, and again, that's the narrative in most superhero stories, you know what I mean? Like, most superheroes are, great people sacrificing for people, and they can whatever, but they still like got some tragic backstory, right? So with Jesus, it's like, even if like, man, what if Jesus lived in 2025 and they actually documented his whole life? I mean, I'm not gonna say he was, we'd be looking at the Diddy trial, but like, Jesus never did anything wrong. But if he did, and even if it was documented at the point where a group of people, right, are trying to create a text to distribute to the masses that the vast majority will accept, so that we can minimize the conflict, because most of the conflict is revolving around religion. So I'm taking all of this stuff into consideration when I'm making my opinion about how I feel on God, Jesus, all of this, right? So even if it was in there at that point, they're gonna eliminate it, because it's just, it doesn't contribute to them getting the outcome that they want to get. Because if you believe that you already got a level of, it should be a few things, because even though we might come from different places, like we experience the same things, we have the same feelings. So most people, if they feel like someone else, especially someone perfect, literally gave their life for them, they'll have some level of a sense of appreciation as well as some level of guilt, right? Because we can all say that's not fair. And I think most people at their core, you have something that just kind of doesn't sit right when you know it's a situation where it's not fair. Even if it's to your benefit, right? You might accept it, but it's still something that just kind of makes stuff kind of feel a little bit off balance. So, that combination is a pretty good combination to inspire people to behave a certain way. It is, but the more experience people get and you realize like it's not realistic, and they try like it wasn't realistic for anybody, including Jesus, and he did not do it, right? It wasn't realistic for anybody, including God, and he did not do it. So specifically Jesus, and this is a combination of everything that I've been taught, and then me trying to resolve all of the conflicts within it for myself to be able to accept it. And this is what I've accepted without me having the need for God or Jesus to be right. Perfect, not right. To be perfect, it eliminates a lot of the other conflicts that I have with religion, because the only reason the other things were conflicts is because it just doesn't align with that. But I can, even if I'm wrong, I can make sense of all of it to the point of it being where it is, just based off these contributing factors that we all have to accept that whatever version of the text that we has been manipulated multiple times by multiple different groups with very specific agendas, primarily control, right? So we have what we have because that's the desired outcome. We've seen the effectiveness of deploying this religion on an entire culture of people to get them to actually conform and accept being enslaved by another group of people, despite the fact that they were treated like they were not human. So again, I'm not dismissing any of it because it all weighs in, right? Because for it to be used like that, there's no way I could believe that God intended for it to be used like that, but there's no way I can dispute that it was used like that. Black people were enslaved. You can imprison someone physically, but you can only enslave someone mentally. So I've seen this. Well, I haven't. Well, I guess I have really, like not at that time, but even in present time, I've seen this this book be deployed to brainwash people into doing stuff that's not in their best interest because somebody else is telling them that that's what they're supposed to do, and it don't make sense. So for it to make sense, again, it has to be this unrealistic standard or example to create these emotions to drive these beliefs and actions. But it doesn't for me, because like I don't need God or Jesus to be perfect. So when I think about it, like how it just the story, right? It like whatever the variables are. So when I say variables, some people, but like if let's say people accept that Jesus was a man He did live on earth. He did live, a little bit over 30 years. He did go through all of the stuff that he went through and was crucified. And we just agree on that, whether you believe that he was resurrected, whether you believe he was the Son of God, whether you believe he was actually God come down to live this life as a man in the flesh. Whatever you believe, if the story is true that this person existed, they had the childhood that they had, and then they went out into the world with their teachings and examples and affected all of these people to start living a different way versus how they were living before. But how they were living before was based off how God set it up for them to live. So this is a modification of the way society should behave, but the way that society was behaving was established by God. So if that's not a mistake, what was Jesus there to correct? So he had to be there to die for our sins. But why are we so inherently flawed that we're irredeemable on our own? I don't believe it. I just believe that people need to believe it and believe it, because it's still the same. Like it's still like we believe the same thing. We believe that God can do anything, and like, so for me to kind of like, how would this make sense, or what would be the most likely thing? Because I do see, based off of the stories in the Bible, other people can feel however they feel about it, but I feel like you can clearly see that God grew over time, because he was one way and it didn't work, and then he changed to something else. And like, not just God, but pretty much everybody in the Bible, in a nutshell, that's the story. They were in one situation, behaving a certain way that really wasn't working for them, and then they switched, or they just had to be so committed to behaving this one way consistently for however long until they get rewarded. If those are the standards, then that's what, you condition the people to, because life is life and everybody gonna go through it. So just to get people to accept that in itself, is an accomplishment to adjust the behavior, because that's what it is. It's, look, when you behave this way, like, destruction is the outcome. Like, over whatever period of time, if this is the way you behave as a race, like if we behaved Old Testament as a race, which at times we still revert back to doing, right? And typically is still over the same things, which is religion. And who's entitled to, and who's God's chosen people, and all of this stuff, right? So who's the favorite kid? Who's the favorite kid? Come on, if you got siblings, y'all had the conversations or the thoughts or something. Same thing. Whether you want to admit it or not, same thing. Like, God was trying to figure it out, and some things, after having enough evidence that doing it the way he thought was right wasn't right, he made an adjustment. Why y'all can't just accept that? Why we gotta like make fairy tales? So what I feel like would be more than likely, given that God is capable of doing anything, so if he could come live this existence, I feel like the reality is they ain't gonna tell us what really happened, because he just like the rest of us, and he probably failed miserably. Now, he still did all these extraordinary things, so we only gonna tell that because that tends to be how history is written, right? We don't write all of the bad stuff about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln. Like, we know very little of the bad things. Come on, man. Y'all think these dudes was stop it. Like, this is not like it's an observation. The vast majority of the most messed up people are the people that are in positions of power and have that. So to get to the point of being the president of the United States, you have to be a certain type of person. And that doesn't mean just because you got power, you're gonna abuse it. But nobody's perfect. But they don't got social media and they ain't got people taking pictures of them. Like, for somebody to take a picture of them, they was gonna be aware, right? So they don't report on all the bad stuff. They report on the good stuff, but like it creates this unrealistic expectation, or it doesn't exist. If Jesus came down here, Jesus fucked up. And it ain't nothing wrong with that. That's actually what I feel like the lesson is in all of this. It's like we as people tend to not want to show our flaws. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want people in our business. And that's understandable. So even this for me, like the more vulnerable I'm willing to be, the more freeing it is for me. And it's a lot of stuff that I just chose not to talk about because I ain't want to deal with whatever. But like, this is me. So for people to understand me, I mean, I gotta tell you the truth. But I felt like, well, what if I only tell you half of the truth? Like, that's more likely, right? Now I'm trying to tell as a complete of a story as I can, just prioritizing certain things as they come to my mind. There's a lot of stuff I gotta get to. But for right now, like, this is more important, like, for this to be known than potentially something happened when I was in the 6th grade, right? Because this is a bigger part of who I am and why I move the way I move and why I think what I think. So I think it's more likely, and this is the parallel just from parenting. We want the best for our kids. We try to put them in situations, and I was just sitting there with my sister, like looking at all kind of stuff on the floor and watch my nephew just like, I don't see it. And it's just like, man, it ain't no explanation, but we see it. And like, we got to accept that we're different. But that's through experience, right? I clean the way I clean because I was taught to clean that way growing up. And then I was in the Army and I was a cook in the Army, and the standards for cleanliness are extraordinary. Like, so typically my standards are a little bit higher than some other people. Now, it's not what it used to be. I'm more organized than I am clean at this point. But anyway, it's a progression. You learn, you experience stuff. So I felt like even if that was the intent, we all have free will. I think that is something universally accepted, that we have free will. And I'm not certain, but I don't really know a lot of people. I don't really know anybody that dispute we have free will. But at the same time, like, one of the things about religion that creates this conflict with me is that's something I'm being told at the same time as I'm being told, like, things are predestined and God knows. It's like, that don't even add up. But it's just because at the same time, I'm trying to be forced to accept that God is perfect. Because if he's not perfect, and we can just admit that he made some mistakes and he made some adjustments, then it eliminates a lot of these conflicts, because it's just, oh, that was just at a different point of his evolution as a parent, as a God, right? He learned and adjusted from looking at the outcomes of his decisions. He made bad decisions, and we made bad decisions. And at some point, he accepted that we're all gonna fuck up, and that's okay. What's important is we behave a certain way, and we treat each other a certain way, and respect each other. And like, all of the New Testament stuff is basically us treating each other better and having more patience, having more understanding, sympathy, forgiveness, consideration for other people. It's not that freaking complicated. But I think that the reason that that was the case was because Jesus, going through the experience, realized you can't get out unscathed. You can't. Now, they want to pretend he was perfect and not report on the mistakes, but I believe that's the reason that it's a change in the doctrine, because it's our tendency as a parent, if we keep telling our kids stuff and they not doing whatever we told them to do, and we keep seeing this outcome, and we try to get them to understand, I don't want this outcome for you. Everything that I'm doing so you don't have this outcome. But for some reason, because you have free will, you continue to do this, which gets you this negative outcome. So because I love you, let me explain, and then let me show you. So I feel like that's where Jesus came in. I feel like Jesus was God's let me show you, right? Because that's what we do as parents. Give me the broom. Get out the way. Let me show you. So I felt like that's what Jesus was supposed to be. It was God's let me show you. Because keep in mind, God never had the human experience. He just created us and try to set us up to be successful, and then hope for the best. But we got free will, so it just, no matter what he did, we just kept taking it off the rails, to the extent of, left to our own devices, if we continue to behave the way that he set us up to behave initially, because that is how he set us up to behave initially, right? It only leads to destruction. So because God saw that, Jesus was his let me show y'all. Man, let me show y'all how y'all supposed to do this, because the way y'all doing it ain't gonna work. And I know I told y'all to do that at first, but again, we got too much evidence to dispute the fact that if y'all behave that way, this shit is going off the rails. So let me show y'all. Boom, Jesus. And then you know what happened? Once Jesus got out in the world got a hold of Jesus, and Jesus made some mistakes, and Jesus did some stuff they don't want to tell us he did. But that's what made it like, man, it ain't no way around it. God, like, Jesus was God, let me show y'all, but what ended up happening was it actually showed him. It actually, because the change that's supposed to be reflected in us as humans is the change that God made as God, right? Because once he came down here and experienced it, he instructed us to change, but that's because he changed. Because we were like him. But being like him led to destruction. People don't, like, y'all can feel how y'all want it. Like, that's not my opinion. That's what's in the book. Like, don't come at me. That's what's in the book. So this is not, that's a report. That's not an opinion. no matter what he did, no matter how much guidance he tried to give based off the way he set us up in the beginning, we was wired for, so that was his fault. And he realized that. So Jesus was his, let me show y'all. But then once he was in that position, then he realized, dang, it ain't possible. I can't hold these people to this standard. I can't just be murking these cats because they doing this stuff. Cause like that stuff is part of who they are. Cause that stuff I put in them. But we have to make a modification. Okay, let's rewire the programming to be forgiving, to be understanding, to be loved. Because the programming that it gave at first was, again, take what you're entitled to, right? Be vengeful, be jealous, be wrathful, all of this stuff. And then turn around and tell us not to do it because he realized, that ain't what y'all need to do because that only leads to y'all destruction. Where is perfect anywhere in this? And this, again, it's my opinion, but it is based off of the evidence that I've been given. I didn't just pull it out of thin air. And in all honesty, I truly feel like God gave this to me to eliminate my conflict. He said, Clarence, like the only reason you conflicted is because you keep trying to resolve a conflict of me being perfect, and I'm not. And I never was. And the reason they told y'all that was to control y'all and to get y'all to behave a certain way. But if you can understand that I don't need to be perfect for you to behave that way, that's the best thing for you to do, and I'm gonna take care of you, like, we good. You ain't gotta be perfect, and you ain't gotta believe that I'm perfect, but you gotta do what you're supposed to do. And that's all I could ask as a father, is for you to take what I blessed you with and do what you're supposed to do with it, and help the people that you're supposed to help with it, and do your part. And as long as you do that, it don't matter what nobody else think. But what I need you to do is tell these people they don't have to have unrealistic standards or expectations or even beliefs about me being God, being perfect, because I ain't gotta be perfect to do what I do. And just do what they supposed to do. So that's what, like, my opinion of Jesus is that Jesus was, like, this experience of Jesus was God saying, let me show y'all. But he didn't know what he was in for. And then when he got down here, he realized it's no way to get through this with those expectations of like, it ain't gonna work. So he became a more forgiving God. He became a more understanding God, right? So he changed. And that's why we're supposed to change. But like, we are created in his image, and we are not perfect, and we were not designed to be perfect. We are a work in progress. And so is he. And that's okay, because he still show up for me every time I need him. So that's how I feel about Jesus. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Till next time, Timeshare Clarence. Peace.